Good evening. Libation is an ancient African tradition said to have traveled from the regions of Kush, Meroe, and Nubia to Egypt, and from there throughout the world, carrying the Kemetic beliefs of Ma'at: truth, justice, order, balance, harmony, reciprocity, right and righteousness, respect, and human dignity, taking on new forms, uses, and meanings among the world's people. To celebrate Lizz's life, honor her love for Africa, its history, culture, and spirituality, her love for all people, and her dedication to fighting for justice for her brothers and sisters throughout the African diaspora, particularly here in our beloved St. Louis, we offer libation in this tradition. Please join me after each statement by voicing your agreement, affirming with the response, Ashe, a continuation and restatement of Ma'at, but in Yoruba thought. It's an acknowledgement that the vital force of God's power and energy exists in everything, and that existence is dependent upon it. When we say Ashe, it is very similar to saying amen. We are agreeing that it is so, and that our own positive, affirming energy is offered, individually and collectively, as a community. The libation to the Supreme Creator God, known as Oludumare, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah. We recognize your supreme power and benevolence and invoke your presence and say, thank you. Ashe. We honor the many ancient gods of Africa in whom our ancestors believed by calling these names: Ra, Hathor, Isis, and Obatala, Shango, Yemaya. Through the pouring of this cool liquid, we calm our spirits and humble ourselves to the Creator's divine order. We bring our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual states into oneness and balance with all God's beings and creations in the universe. We call the names of freedom-fighting, justice-seeking ancestors: Imhotep, Asante Nat Turner, Absalom Jones, Toussaint Louverture, Ida Wells Barnett, Sojourner Truth, David Walker, Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, El Haj Malik Shabazz, Nelson Mandela, Fannie Lou Hamer, Dick Gregory, Sandra Bland, Gwen Giles, Pearlie Evans. These are only a few who sit with many, including our own ancestors, those who are the source of our bloodlines and who have given us life, character, and wisdom. Please call out the names of your ancestors. Joseph Russell Fry, Ashe. And we can now add and call the name of our sister, our friend, our fearless freedom fighter, Lizz Brown, among the ancestors. Lizz Brown, who believed earnestly in justice and that one could make a difference, but taught us the task of justice and compassion belongs to all. Ashe. We celebrate her, gain power, and take from her life the lessons that the struggle to eradicate racism and oppression is not over, that what we shall become is what we can achieve together, and that we have the responsibility and the ability to deconstruct the system of injustice that harms us all. I say,
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to celebrate the life of our lioness, one who was full of compassion and love, and who was courageous and bold. And she had a favorite scripture that she loved, and she lived, and she taught us, and that was Micah 6 and 8. And I'll be reading that today. And it reads, "But he's already made it plain. Who is he, God? How to live and what to do. What is he looking for in man and women? God is quite simple. Do what is fair and just to your neighbor. Be compassionate and loyal in your love. And most of all, don't take yourself so seriously, but take him, the creator, the most serious one."
Good evening, St. Louis. Oh, we can do better than that. I said good evening, St. Louis. We are streaming around the world, and I want you to let folks know how we do things here in St. Louis. Good evening, St. Louis. All right, let's thank our opening performers, Mr. David Jackson, Dottie Kennedy.
You are listening to a podcast of the
We
Lizz
coming.
Brown Show.
We come. Let's thank Mr. David Jackson, Dottie Kennedy on drums, Reverend Dr. Carla Fry, and Reverend Dinah Tapman. Let's give them all a round of applause. This is the call to celebrate. We have a brief video tribute to our sister Lizz Brown, and we will continue the program immediately following this tribute.
You are listening to a podcast of The Lizz Brown Show.
I think I'm hearing revolution in the air.
Good evening. My name is Lizz Brown, and I am here tonight to express my concern about what is happening in the city of St. Louis in the public schools. It is unfortunate that we have to come together tonight to express what we have been talking about for the last 4 years. It is unfortunate that we have to come here tonight and say, even though Ken King is not here, this is directed to him. 300 people, over 300 people 3 years ago got on buses and went up to Jefferson City and told Ken King, do not allow an district plummeted 26 accreditation points under Francis Ray and his cronies. We told Kim King said nothing when we lost our accreditation points. Kim King said nothing when schools were closed on North St. Louis and not closed anyplace else. Kim King said nothing when parents were not asked to input into these decisions. Kim King said nothing when Bill Roberti squandered millions of our dollars. Kim King was silent during the process. We are not here, and I want to read this right. The future of our children, we're not here tonight about the future of our children. We are here, this is not a discussion about what are the best practices. We are here for one reason and one reason only, because of politics. That's why we are here. We are here because there are hundreds of millions of dollars in the St. Louis public school budget, and the politicians, the incompetent politicians that ran our district into the ground and lost all those accreditation points, want complete and absolute control over that money. We need to be clear. The citizens that are here tonight that have taken their time out to come and speak to you are saying one simple thing. Keep your hands off our district.
6 months after 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed by a Ferguson police officer, the U.S. Justice Department finds that the Ferguson Police Department has a pattern of bias against its black residents in violation of the 14th Amendment. According to the Justice Department report, between 2012 and 2014, African Americans made up 67% of the population of Ferguson, but they accounted for 85% of all vehicle stops, 90% of all citations, and 93% of all arrests. In 88% of use of force cases, force was used against black people. The full report, which will be released tomorrow, also includes as evidence emails with racist jokes written by police and court employees on their official work email accounts. Joining me now, Lizz Brown, criminal defense attorney and a columnist for the St. Louis American newspaper and MSNBC's Tremaine League. Lizz Brown, your reaction to the Justice Department report?
Well, I think that if we simply unpack one of those racist jokes that you referred to, I think we can get a sense of exactly what the Justice Department report is going to say. One of the jokes, the punchline, the heinous punchline, was that an African-American woman terminated her pregnancy and she was rewarded with $3,000 by Crime Stoppers. That was a joke that was passed along by police officers and other court officials. So basically what this police institution was saying is that African American people, women, give birth to criminals. And that is exactly what African Americans have been saying, that the police department, the institution, practices discrimination upon them based upon their color. I mean, think about it. It's an all-white police department talking about African American women giving birth to criminals. It's heinous, and it is exactly what the problem is within Ferguson and the surrounding region.
There's so many aspects about this, and Liz, let's talk to you, because goodness knows you're on the ground there and getting a sense of what people are saying and how the reaction to the apology, non-apology, the hands up, don't shoot gesture at the game, how that went over. It makes me wonder if there's a sense that, you know, this was a tone-deaf kind of comment and stance to be having at a time when healing is supposed to be the job one.
Well, I really think that we need to have a larger discussion about what the Rams organization, what the Rams players are being asked to apologize for. What is it that they did that was something that was worthy of an apology? And I think that we also have to analyze it from the fury of this police officers association, a largely white association, I would add. In fact, in St. Louis, we have two different police officers association, an African American Police Officers Association, the Ethical Society, and the largely white Police Officers Association. And the rage that was expressed by the head of this White Police Officers Association is stunning. And you have to ask, as a citizen, as an observer, if you're this angry about players holding their hands up in a free nation, then how do you respond to people on the ground, citizens on the ground who hold their hands up? What do they receive from you? What kind of treatment do those people receive from this police department? Where does your fury about this come from? I don't understand, except to say that you feel somehow that you should be able to tell people, certain people, how they are supposed to act. I don't understand. This is a deep and almost ancient rage that's being directed at these football players.
Who has the credibility locally to make that kind of ask in this community right now? Who had that kind of credibility coming into this crisis, and who is earning that kind of credibility by being a leader, by being a trustworthy leader, now as we are on day 9 of this crisis and presumably heading into day 10. Joining us now is Lizz Brown. She's an attorney and columnist for the St. Louis American. Ms. Brown, thank you very much for being with us. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me again, Rachel.
So who would you say is the leadership, the trusted leaders, the trusted institutions in this community at a time when leadership seems like it's sorely needed?
I think that we have to start the conversation with the observation that prior to what has happened in Ferguson, there's been a leadership void. There has been a leadership void politically. We have one African-American elected official in the Ferguson area. There's been a political void with respect to organizations reaching out and connecting with young people. There's been a political void in the sense that citizens have pulled themselves out of the political process. So there's a void for leadership in this community. And I think that some of the things that we're seeing on the ground right now is a reflection of the fact that there is a void. And then what happens when you have a void? Well, you have some people that may want to jump in and fill the void. And the question becomes, should those be the people that are jumping in to address this? Have they earned the credibility? Have they made the connection? Have they worked collaboratively with any other organizations? Those are the questions that we have to ask before we even deem anyone a leader or a non-leader.
The reason I wanted to have Frank on, and it's not something I really like doing, is that there is this kind of, there's ripples of something dark and ugly that I've started to see in social media around folks in the St. Louis area that I worry about in advance of what's coming down the pike. And so much of the attention has been on, quote, the protesters getting violent, and it doesn't seem to me that the ugliness is necessarily coming from those quadrants, or certainly not from those quadrants exclusively.
Well, I think that what we really have to have a discussion about, Chris, is who sets the tone? What tone has been set? And I would charge that the tone has been set that would allow for a racist organization like the Klan to feel comfortable in recruitment. And what is the tone that's been set? The tone is that the tone that has been set is that African American, largely peaceful African American protesters and activists need to have a response, a military response to them. It's almost like they've taken a page and twisted it out of the Untouchables, where he says that, you know, if you bring a rock, we'll bring a tank. That's the response that has been to the largely African-American protesters. So you set the tone that these are people that we need to respond to in this type of way. When you have a chief of police in St. Louis that's racially profiling people that commit crimes as black on black crime, what does that tell? What is that saying? That's saying that crime has a face, and the face is an African-American face, and you don't have to worry about the crime because it's just black folks hurting other black folks. So when we set the tone that a certain group of people responds in this lawless type of way, and that we have to respond to them in a militaristic type of way, you open the door for an organization, a racist organization like the Klan, to come in and take advantage of that.
So you think the way that the tone that has been set by officials so far who have been by what they're saying, I'm going to talk to Chief Dutz in just a moment, they're saying they are trying to be calm, they're trying to urge people to be peaceful, that just to follow their First Amendment rights and not use violence. What is wrong? Well, you think they're sending a tone of suspicion?
Well, let's unpack the governor's response, or the governor's press conference. 1,000 people. Why are you saying 1,000 people? What you can take out of that is that that's what we need to respond to peaceful protesters. Protesters haven't shot and killed anyone. Protesters haven't harmed people. So why are we responding to them? Because it's these types of protesters. You're setting the tone that these types of people need to be responded to in this way. And that opens the door for the Klan to go in and to recruit people. I lay it at the feet of law enforcement, how they've prosecuted this case, how they've responded to peaceful protesters. I lay it at their feet. This is their fault.
Lizz Brown, thank you very much. And joining me now is St. Louis Police Chief Sam.
That's Lizz Brown in her own voice. Let's give it up, you guys. We all have a Lizz Brown story or two or three or four or five. That's why we're here this evening. But tonight, the committee has chosen some folks to kind of talk from 2 to 3 minutes. Now, I know we've got some ministers on the program, and you don't quite understand what 2 to 3 minutes is. 2 to 3 minutes is where we want to kind of keep this thing, because we'd like to be home by 10 tonight. So, here's a brother that is the international representative for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. He's our own. He's Minister Akbar Muhammad with the overview. Minister Muhammad.
Good evening. First, as it's customary, you know by that name, I'm a Muslim, so we begin in the name of God. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. And I wanted to say first that I took 30 seconds out of my 3 minutes, and I'm not known for brevity, but I want to respect the time tonight. I want to start off with consciousness. And Lizz Brown brought consciousness to this community as our brother did on his show, and many others who had shows on the radio. But Lizz Brown to me was very special. When I came back to St. Louis from Africa, she had her show and she invited me on over and over again so that I could give a world view. And I really respect and love that. And then she took a trip to Africa. And many of you would have never went to Africa if it was not for Lizz Brown. I mean, she's the one that stimulated you to put your feet on African soil. And then she brought a level of consciousness even in Africa when she did a seminar on talk radio. I love and respect her. And one thing I wanted to say tonight, just listening and reading this piece, is that when you have leaders in the community, you have to protect those leaders. You have to look out for them. You have to talk to your children about what they're doing. You know, they hear you in the morning or see you listening to the radio, and you need to say, this is our sister Lizz Brown. And what she's doing is talking about the challenges of our community and giving us enlightenment on how we should go after dealing with those problems. So I have to say that that's our responsibility. When I got word from Kevin, and Kevin, we want to thank you. You know how to put things in front of the public. When you look at this beautiful program, that's Kevin. And Kevin understands that. But I got word from Kevin that she had passed, and I was shocked. I said, Lizz has passed? And then I began to think and reflect on her and her work. And I appreciate this audience. This is a conscious audience, and you know it takes people to build consciousness. I lived in Africa for 12 years, and I'm always trying to beat that drum. So in St. Louis, and I want to just say this as I close. Before I close, I want to say that my book, Africa in the World, Tuesday it will be available, and I would hope that you would read it because I'm from St. Louis, I mean transplant, but this is the community that I grew up in and worked in. But I just want to mention this. St. Louis has produced giants. Our children will never know those giants, and I'm talking about people who brought consciousness to this community, people who brought a cultural kind of nuance and reaching for Africa and putting it in this community. But we have Barbara Antia, Miles Davis, Leon Thomas, Maya Angelou, Danny Hathaway, Grant Green, Clark Terry, Willie Akins, and Oliver Sane. Is that his name? Oliver Sane. I know his son well from Chicago. These are people that came out of this community. Lizz Brown came from this community. And Lizz Brown as a woman and a struggler and a fighter. And you can't get hung up on I disagree with her. Some people who should be here tonight should be here to pay respect to Lizz Brown. You can't say you didn't know about it unless your head is buried in the sand, you didn't read The American. But to take a few minutes to say I want to honor her for the consciousness that she brought to this community shouldn't be too much for you to do. So I want to give greetings to her family from Minister Farrakhan. He always talked about her because he did one show, I believe, with her. But I told him that I would be here tonight talking about Lizz Brown's commitment to this community and bringing a level of consciousness. Thank you. God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, here's a little audience participation because I understand Lizz's father and other family members around the country are watching. So what I'm going to ask you to do, St. Louis, is to repeat after me so that we can say hi to Daddy Brown. And what I want you to do is let's just show him how much we love Lizz. So repeat after me. We love Lizz Brown. We love Lizz Brown. Now give it one more time. As they make their way to the stage, Reverend Kenneth McCoy and Miss Martha Jean West, I'd like to share a little Lizz Brown story with you right quick because we all have our stories. Initially, I was going to be on program and get to say my little piece, and I've been working on it for 2 weeks. And then Kevin called me up and said, nah, man, you're gonna be MC. I said, okay, but I'm still gonna work my piece in, Kevin, all right? Anyway, you know, when Lizz returned to radio in 2013, actually in 2012, Lizz called me up and said, I'll come back to radio, I'll do radio, Keith, but it's two things that I have to do and I have to demand. I can only come back to radio and do morning drive from 6 to 9, and I can only come back and do radio if we're going to syndicate. For those that don't know what syndication is, to take the program and broadcast it on other stations around the world, Brother Akbar. So that was her goal. She said, that's the only way I'm coming back. So I went and I sat and I met with Bert Kaufman, the owner of the new WGNU, and Bert took me over to the MAC, Missouri Athletic Club, and we were breakfast, and we took me over to the Ritz-Carlton, and I mean, he really just doing it up. We eating in some real high class, real high society places. And so I tell Bert, I say, hey man, listen, I'm gonna bring Lizz Brown back to the radio, and she wants to do 6 to 9. He said, well, I already got some folks from 6 to 9. I said, well, you're gonna have to move them. Well, Liz told me to tell him, right? Liz said, tell him you gotta move them. So he said, what I can do for you, I'll give you any time you want, Brother Akbar, after 10 o'clock in the morning. You can have any time you want, 10, 11, 12, I'll bring her back. I said, okay, so I went back to Liz. I said, hey, Liz, look, I met with Bert, like you told me. And I told Bert we want a 6 a to 9 a in the morning drive where she was when she was there for 15 years, and that's what she wants. She said, Keith, I didn't tell you that. I'm not taking 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You go back to Bert, tell Bert if I'm coming back at 6 to 9. I'm thinking, you ain't been on radio in 5 years. You're going to take what you're going to get. I said it to myself, right? I didn't say that to Liz. She said, you go back and you get the deal done. Fortunately for us, we were able to go back to the table. We met with Bert. He had heard things about Liz. And one of the things that he had heard about Liz is that she hated white people. Hated white people. And so I said, brother, let me tell you something. Don't be confused about love of self for hating one another, hating someone else. Don't be confused. I said, she don't talk hate. She talk about loving self, her babies, the black community. So please, Bert, don't get it confused. He said, well, that's what I heard. Bert was about 80 then or 85. I said, well, Bert, do me a favor. Sit down with her. Please, just have breakfast with her. And lo and behold, I'll never forget it. December 2012. Gerald, we had breakfast at the Ritz-Carlton. And he talked to Liz, well, Liz talked to him, for about 2.5 hours. I was eating. I just looked up, and every once in a while I did like this. When we left there, he moved 2 prominent talk show hosts from their spot, from 8 and 9 to, and they said, well, we're not going to do it. He moved them, and Liz started in January, 6 to 9, like what she told me to go get when I was told. That was Lizz Brown. She accepted notes. She never compromised. She knew what she wanted, and that is what she wanted. So next up, we have 2 speakers, Reverend Kenneth McCoy, followed by Miss Martha Jean West. Reverend McCoy.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I want to thank Reverend Anton. I'm honored to be here. Liz is very dear to my heart. I lost not just a friend, I lost a sister. And Liz and I never had a conversation that was under an hour. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit about social Liz and her worldview in terms of social justice. What I discovered about Liz was that there was no distinction, that she had a very, very consistent personality. And so if you talk to Liz, you talk to Liz about social justice. Liz was an avid Game of Thrones fan. And you really shouldn't be surprised by that, because she saw it in a very, very political context. And that's how she saw the world. Now, I want to thank, I believe it's Sylvester Brown for coining the description. She is our lioness. And we, in fact, were her cubs. So Liz and I had a very strong relationship. If you were close to Liz, I mean, if you really, really knew Liz, there was a time that you fell out with Liz. Amen anyhow. I remember when Bill Roberti came to town. I had done Liz's show that morning, and we were just sort of sitting around, just debriefing. And she got a fax about some changes that were coming to St. Louis Public Schools. And we immediately went to work organizing. I was very excited about it. A lot of stuff happened. I don't have time to go into it, but Liz and I, we organized a number of meetings, a number of actions. At the time, I was executive director of Acorn, and I had gotten some money from the city. Amen, somebody, please help me. And I got a call from the mayor. I said, Mayor, you know, we agreed that we'll disagree sometimes. And so some strange things happened to my books. Strange things happened to my books. And so I wasn't able to pay my staff. And so I had a conversation with Liz. It was probably the hardest conversation I ever had in my life, because I had to tell Liz I had to stand down. And I said if it was just me, I would. But because I have to pay these folk. Liz didn't change her expression. She said, "Is that right, Ken?" I said, "Yeah, that's right." I said, "We good?" She said, "Mm-hmm." So I left, went back to the office. And the next morning, you know, my phone was ringing off the hook. And people were calling me saying, "Ken, your girl is killing you on the air." She said you were the biggest Uncle Tom and sellout that God had ever made. And she instructed her listening audience to take their acorn cards. And you remember in the movie Glory when Denzel Washington tore the check up and said, "Tear it up, tear it up." Liz was on the air screaming, "Tear it up, tear it up." So I got mad at Liz. And an incredible things happen when you love people. Amen, somebody. And I loved Liz. And the reality of the matter is, Liz was right. Liz did not compromise when it came to what was right, what was wrong. She did not compromise when it came to the truth. If Liz was a jazz song, her name would be Straight No Chaser. And can you imagine Liz being on the air? We're living in the age of alternative facts, where the truth just simply does not matter. As an individual, I'm blessed, having known her. As a community, we're blessed. Liz served us, and she saw us as her babies. And so I want to say to Liz's family, I want to say to the community that Liz left an incredible legacy in this community. And Liz, with her talk show, those few hours, did more good than most organizations. So, Liz, and let me say this, Liz, I know you're listening. Liz always had me thinking she was older, that I was older than she was, and would call me old man. So I went to see her one day when she was doing her chemo. And I got a look at that little thing they put around your arm, and I saw that 5'8". Liz was wise beyond her years. And I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to close. We really don't know what sacrifice is. Liz was a well-qualified, well-credentialed attorney who could not get a job in this community. And when she needed this community failed her miserably. I'm sorry. We did. So when you talk about sacrifice, Liz gave everything that she could ever possibly give to this community, right down to her life and the quality of her life. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hi, I'm Martha West, and Liz was one of my buddies on the radio. When she come in, I'm living my life like a liberal and loving it. But in the mornings, we could have some of the big disagreements. She started talking about my little student Reverend Nance, whom I taught and always called him Little Earl. And she's taking the water for the mayor. And also, we had one big disagreement over in the 22nd Ward. She was upset with, who's that? Jeffrey Boyd, Kenny Jones, Jay Ozier. They were all running against Jeffrey Boyd and Jamila, and had little O.C. Johnson. I called in. I said, Liz, what are you talking about? I'm for all of them. I'm for Jay Ozier, I'm for Kenny, and O.C. Johnson. And somebody called in, said, is she serious? She said, yes, Martha is serious, because I am going with them and not with your group. And when she would talk about Little Earl, oh, I mean, she just loved every day. And I said, she's talking about my boy again. And she can't do that. But she did it. And she talked about white folks every day. And she didn't compromise. And one of her big love was the movies. Liz always, she loved serious movies. And she would be out at the Tivoli. She loved those movies. But Liz was a great person. As I said, we agree and we would disagree. And most of the time, I gave her credit. She was right. She was right. But she was smart. And I was so hurt when Prince called and told me that Liz was ill and she would stand with him, because I had not seen her for some time. And see, the older people, like, who's that, keep talking about the flip phone. I got that in my purse now. We the older ones. And when they would see me, Martha, where is Liz? I said, I don't know. But she had so many people in the community who loved her. Also, like, when we wanted to have our neighborhood organizations and we couldn't get the Board of Aldermen to help us, Liz would be there to help us. But she had all us old people, men and women, and they are out there now wondering and loving Liz, because she was one of a kind. She was what? A liberal, living my life as a liberal and loving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha Jean. For our next guest, we have one of our rising stars and one of our superstars in this community, a world leader. It is with great pleasure that I bring her up to introduce our next special guest, because she has a personal relationship with them. Ladies and gentlemen, let's receive the city treasurer, Tashara Jones.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming this evening. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know Liz very well, but I respected her voice, I respected her power, and I respected her influence. And she will be sorely missed as a strong Black female voice in our community and on the radio and in print. So we're really going to miss that. This evening, I have the honor of introducing another sister who I also respect, her power, her voice, and her influence. She is the better half of Baltimore's power couple, that I like to call them. She is the wife of my good friend who I share a birthday with, Nick Mosby. He's a Maryland delegate. And she is the youngest state's attorney in the country. She is the fierce, the formidable Baltimore State's Attorney, Marilyn Mosby. Please receive her.
Good evening. I'm going to say that again. Good evening, St. Louis. That's what I'm talking about. I am so deeply saddened, but extremely, extremely humbled to be able to share in this occasion with all of you tonight. And before I go any further, I have to acknowledge and extend my genuine love and sincere appreciation to the family of Lizz Brown. I know that this is a tremendous loss to the family, for all of you. And in times like this, please hold fast to God's promise in Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Kaylin Brown, let me tell you, your mother was an angel. Thank you for sharing your beautiful mother with the world. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge those behind this fantastic program, Reverend Diana Tapman, Minister Akbar Muhammad, Reverend Dr. Carla Fry, Kevin Bryant, Carolyn Smith, Jan Jacobs Brown, Attorney David Hemingway, Rosetta Keaton, and especially Angela Haynes. Thank you for inviting me here tonight, but more importantly, thank you for your efforts to pay tribute to such an incredible, what I like to call, warrior woman. I am so honored to be here tonight as we pause to celebrate such a notable contributor to this community, and in fact, not just this community, but this nation, our dear sister Lizz Brown. It feels odd to say that we are pausing because Lizz seemed to never pause as she was constantly and persistently on her assignment to illuminate both the joys and sorrows of our communities, our people, and our journey. We all know that life is both good and bad, but we are all so blessed that the good Lord saw fit to deposit so much wisdom, so much love, so much courage into Lizz so that she could tell the whole story of these times in which we currently live, the good, the bad, the ugly, and even the beautiful. Some will ask, why is Marilyn Mosby here all the way from Baltimore? Good question, and I'm happy to tell you why it's so important for me and my husband Nick to be in attendance tonight. You see, much like this community, Baltimore has had its share of dark days. As much as we are known for the home of the more consequential personalities, characters, moments, and the formative years of American history, present-day Baltimore has seen some dark days. One of our darkest days in recent history occurred on April 19, 2015, 4 months into my term. On that day, an innocent 25-year-old black man by the name of Freddie Carlos Gorey Jr., an innocent 25-year-old, died from injuries he sustained after being placed defenseless in a metal Baltimore police wagon, head first, feet shackled, and handcuffed, as his pleas for medical attention were ignored. In those hours and days that followed, our city experienced one of our most trying times. I don't have to recount the play-by-play for you because it was on cable news every single day for weeks. But what I want to tell you is what brings me here tonight. And what brings me here tonight is that people like Lizz Brown and the voice that she gave to our frustrations, our anger, our humanity, were incredibly inspiring and sustaining to me as the state's attorney. You see, following the decision to charge 6 officers for the death of Freddie Gray, I'm not afraid to admit that even in the face of doing what I knew was right, I found myself vulnerable and, yes, unnerved. I'm human enough to know that we seek affirmation in the midst of the chaos and in turmoil. I'm blessed to have a long and loving standing relationship with a loving husband and a beautiful family who I look to every single day for confirmation that I was doing the right thing and for the right reasons. In addition to the family, I'm surrounded by a loving community back in Baltimore. Every day I receive hugs and kisses, thank yous, I got your back from every corner on the city. But one of my greatest affirmations was the support that I received from the sister we honor here tonight, Lizz Brown. In print, on the airwaves, or on television, she did so much that went a long way in providing context for the decisions that I was forced to make. She became one of the fiercest defenders of my office's handling of the prosecution of those officers. She penned an especially touching piece about a moment of kindness between Mr. Gray's grieving mother and I that helped put a face on the incredible tragedy that ravaged this family in our city. She reached out to me personally on several occasions to encourage me and to lend me support, advice, and wise counsel. You see, in the midst of my storm, it was Liz that reminded me to, quote unquote, stay strong, she told me. What you're doing is powerful and important. Following a hung jury in the first trial, it was Liz who encouraged me to keep fighting, keep going. She thanked me and said, the fact that we are at this point is a testament to your tenacity and fearlessness. She went on to say, I believe strongly that justice will prevail. She was certain about that. 2.5 years later, I learned firsthand that justice is always worth the price paid for its pursuit. I look back and I know that it was because of the accountability that was applied, regardless of one's sex, religion, or occupation, that led to exposure. That exposure ultimately led to reform. And although those individual police officers weren't held criminally responsible, every single Baltimore police officer is being held accountable for the actions of a few. You see, Liz was right. Justice was going to prevail. You see, every battle, every hurdle, every obstacle that we've overcome since the pursuit of those cases brought this nation one step closer to equality. She understood that any and every step towards equality in our justice system is well worth fighting for. She understood this even before I did. So I'm here tonight to simply say thank you. Thank you to Liz for all that you've done for us. Thank you for putting us first. Thank you for putting names and faces to the struggle. Thank you for putting in the work to make us better, smarter, safer, healthier, and more united. That work does not stop now that this good sister has transitioned from labor to reward. You see, Liz, like myself, was a mother. She understood that our children are the greatest litmus test for the decisions we make and the course of action that we pursue, which is why in one of our Twitter exchanges, Liz informed me that she would be in Baltimore every single day of the pending trials. She went on to tell me that her then 8-year-old, Kaylin Brown, is going to be able to write about Baltimore in his life book. She lived her life by example for all of us, especially for you, Kaylin. And the enduring legacy of Lizz Brown is that she showed us all how to fight. She showed us all how to love. And she showed us all how to be courageous in the face of seemingly unconquerable odds. History is replete with tales and chronicles of strong warrior women who led the charge against injustice and equality. Every great movement in this country began with warrior women unafraid to challenge the status quo in the pursuit of justice. Warrior women like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, warrior woman Lily Ledbetter, warrior woman Fannie Lou Hamer, warrior woman, and Lizz Brown, warrior woman. And the thing about warrior women, they never let any time, situation, or circumstance define their destiny. Warrior women who lead by transforming their pain into their passion transforms into a plan, and that plan allows them to pursue their God-given purpose. Lizz Brown taught us that. We as women must continue to fight for our families, our neighborhoods, and yes, for our neighbors. We are all in this together, and now is certainly the time that we must fall back and not allow us to cower as others push a divisive, racist, sexist, and classist agenda. Those who seek to divide us are seemingly unrelenting, and so should we. Whether it's in St. Louis or Baltimore or Charlottesville or Flint, wherever there is a story to tell, injustice to illuminate, or triumphs to boast about, we must continue and expand upon the legacy of Lizz Brown. In the past, we have reached out for Lizz's perspective and direction as oppression and injustice surrounded us. Now we must look at her example and redouble our efforts to bring light to dark places and hope to places of hopelessness. We need to replicate what Lizz Brown has been doing all across this country in every urban city in America. As I close, I'm reminded of one of my favorite Lizz Brown stories, and I believe it's apropos today. I learned of the time in 2007 when she helped lead a group of students in a protest at City Hall over a public school takeover. As the hours grew long, Lizz explained to the students that the mayor was considering several options to bring the protest to an end. One of those options was to have the students all arrested and taken to jail. After explaining all the consequences and letting the young people know that they had done a good and courageous deed on behalf of their community, she gave them all a simple but consequential directive. If you intend to stay until the end, stand up. So as I take my seat with complete humility and gratitude for all that Lizz Brown meant to me, I ask you, St. Louis, if you intend to stay until the end, stand up. If you will fight for better schools, stand up. If you will march for safer streets, stand up. If you will resist injustice where it arises, stand up. If you will join me in saluting this warrior woman and making sure that the world never forgets Lizz Brown, stand up. Because I promise you, Lizz, I will always stand for you. God bless. And on behalf of the Office of State Attorney for Baltimore City, it offers its sincere condolences to loved ones of Elizabeth Lizz Brown. She will be remembered as a warrior woman who was always living life as liberal and loving it. Her fearless yet compassionate spirit will truly be missed. We send our heartfelt sympathy to the loss of someone who meant so much to so many, near and far. May the peace that comes from the memories of love shared comfort you now and the days ahead. God bless.
Oh, y'all can do better than that. Y'all can do better than that. Sister, come bringing the fire. That's why Brother Mosby over there smiling. He said, "That's my baby, that's my baby." She ain't no killer, but don't push her. She ain't no killer, but don't push her. Woo! They got something up there in Baltimore now. Glad I'm on the straight and narrow. Thank you, Attorney Mosby. Thank you so much. Thank you to your husband for coming and blessing us with those words. You see why I said Lizz Brown wasn't just St. Louis? Brother Akbar Muhammad also talked about her being over in Africa, okay? She was global, and I think someone said that this room ought to have been packed to the rim for the benefits that we had for Lizz Brown. There's a good friend of mine also here, and I want to share this real quick before our next speaker, Sterling Moody. You know, it takes a village, and when we came back on the radio in 2013, we needed to create revenue. Mark Casey knows about that, another radio man here. We had to sell our own advertisement, and we had to pay to be on the air, okay? So from 6A to 9A, we had a fee 5 days a week, time 4, 20 days, whole lot of money. We needed to create some revenue, and we went to this man here, Sterling Moody, and he said, "Keith, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Keith." I'm trying to do a Sterling Moody impression here. Don't worry about it. Sterling called 25, am I telling the truth here? He called 25 black business owners. Pulled out of his pocket, said, "I got the first $300. I need all of you to spend a minimum of $300 with Lizz Brown this week. Don't worry about it. You ain't got no check, no credit card. I can run it right here." That was the kind of love that Lizz had and from the community. And we thank you for that, Sterling, because many of them came on and stayed on until we were removed again off the air. And I thank you again for that, my friend. Thank you for being here. As I said, in radio, you need revenue. Well, tonight, we're going to ask for you for some revenue. Now, let's just be real here, because you've all been enjoying yourselves. I know I'm having a good time. And I believe that when you're a leader in the community, you lead by example. So, Kevin, I'm going to commit the first $150 from my wife and I. You don't have to match it. I'm not going to ask you to match it, stand up, wave your dollars in the air like you just don't care. That ain't that kind of party. But we'll put a link up that if you didn't bring your check this evening, that you can go out and make a donation, because we're going to raise some money. See, we're going to take care of Brother Caleb. I said we're going to take care of Brother Caleb. He's going to somebody's college. And we're not going to just do this year. See, I've decided, I ain't even on the committee, I've decided, Tashar, I've decided that we're going to make this an annual celebration. That's what I've decided, Sterling. Mark, I'm going to be calling on some of you here, because Angela and Kevin and the committees, Reverend Tapman, have done a phenomenal job. But I think that we should not forget those that came before us and the contributions. And so I think we should do something every year to honor Lizz Brown. Do you agree? As I said, I'm committing the first $150. We're going to ask that you put a link up here so that if you're not prepared this evening, you can still give. Give something. We want to raise some money this evening, okay? If you are prepared, we're not going to collect and do all that. Just see Angela or one of the, or Reverend Tapman on the way out. If you got a check, you want to do a check. Yes, sir. Keith, K-E-I-T, capital. I'll find that out. I'll find that out for you, okay? But if you got a check, I appreciate that. Please, y'all. Here's a link. All you have to do is go out to this link, youcaring.com. Look for the Memorial Fund for Lizz Brown's son, Kalen. Please do me a favor. Donate $5, $2. I'm not too proud to beg. $1, whatever you got, because it's all going to be relevant. Right, Gerald? I'm asking you, y'all. We got to do this. I'm so tired of others coming in our community, and that's what I hand out. We need a hand up. We're going to give Brother Kalen a hand up here. All right? Y'all with me? Y'all feel me? Y'all all right? You ain't nobody mad at me, are you? Get to writing them checks then if you ain't mad. Our next speaker on the program is Mr. Peter Downs. Please, speakers, if you'll take 2 to 3 minutes, we really appreciate it. We do have a time commitment that we have to keep, so try to do the 2 to 3 minutes if you would, please. I know I've taken my share, but I'm the MC. That's what I do, and I'm going to write a $150 check, too. Praise God. God is good, ain't he? Huh? Won't he do it? Peter Downs. Come on, Peter.
Good evening. Glad everybody who came did come, and I really would like to thank the organizing committee for this event. I was shocked when I heard about Lizz Brown's death, and I'm really happy to see some of us getting together to celebrate her life. When I first met Lizz Brown, I just started getting involved in school issues here in St. Louis. I never heard her radio show, but as you get involved in local issues, you start meeting local politicians, and white politicians would say, oh, she's racist. Say, oh, she's poisonous. And so that's all I'd ever heard about her, when one day my phone rang, picked it up, and there was Lizz. I never met her. She invited me to come onto her show and talk about St. Louis schools. Earlier hour than I wanted to get out of the house at, but I agreed to do it. And at the end of the show, she asked me to come back every week. And we did that for, I think it was 5 years. And, Lizz was probably the #1 champion in this city, fighting against educational injustice, against the plundering of schools for private profit, and against the disenfranchisement of black voters. And in that 5 years, we had some victories, and we had some losses. Our biggest mistake was not expecting how quickly and easily democratic rules would be discarded if the rich and powerful didn't get their way. We did not expect, when we won at the ballot box, that the state would simply throw out the ballot box. We hadn't talked about that possibility, and nor had we prepared with people on how to respond. But I can tell you that Lizz, that I knew, had a very incisive mind. She cut through all the baloney that powerful people and corporations put out when they're up to no good. She exposed the hypocrisy of what was called school reform. She showed how it wasn't helping children, it was about profiting off of them. And she showed how it was about maintaining an underclass, about taking opportunities away from poor and black children so that they could not compete for professional jobs. Liz was constantly pulling back the covers to reveal how a racist system handicapped people of color, and then blamed them for not doing as well as some privileged whites did. She celebrated people who overcame those handicaps, but also pointed out how the system allowed for those exceptions, and there are always exceptions, to help maintain a cover of equity and merit. But she also described how things could be different. She drilled down on issues. With schools, she brought out how the state could provide for the educational needs of every child to create equal opportunity, and exposed how the legislature and state officials refused to do that, but instead created an accreditation system to fail the people that they wanted to undercut, and then blame them for their failure. When state officials changed the rules for black majority school districts to strip their populations of the right to self-rule, she showed how they did it, and she presently described how they would change the rules again to claim success for the people that white people appointed. That might be why some white people called her racist. Liz was a tireless fighter for justice. I think that was partly because she enjoyed doing it. For Liz, working for justice wasn't a chore, it was fun. Many of us have time when we waver, time when we think standing up for what is right is just going to be too hard. It's going to cause too much trouble or take too much effort. Liz was there. She pushed friend and foe alike to do the right thing. She pushed me. There are times when I would hesitate, but she would puncture the excuses I made for myself, and I would have to admit she was right. She pushed me to always do the right thing, and she made me a better person for it. But you know, it can be tough to face the lies you tell yourself. Politicians especially seem to make compromises to get ahead and tell themselves stories to justify them. A reminder to do the right thing when you think it would be easier not to can be uncomfortable. That might be why some politicians call her poison. One of the things I remember most fondly about Liz is her good humor. At least in my experience, she didn't hector you to do the right thing. She used humor to show how ridiculous the wrong thing was. She got outraged by injustice, but she didn't get bitter. She laughed. She showed how ridiculous were the wrappings and excuses for injustice and encouraged others to laugh with her. Last night I got a phone call that brought Liz back to mind. It was a recorded message from the Special Administrative Board running St. Louis Public Schools. They're holding a hearing Monday to figure out some alternative to returning power to the people to elect representatives to run the schools. In my mind's eye, I could see Liz laughing at the message. I could see her ridiculing the dog and pony show that's sure to come. She would say a bunch of racists in Jefferson City decide that black people shouldn't have the same democratic rights as white people, and they want the stooges on this SAB to give them excuses for permanently stripping black citizens of their right to vote. She'd laughingly say they're going to trot out the same old tired acts to say that elections don't work in urban areas. But whatever act they pull out, it doesn't change that it's on the SAB. It's their responsibility what they say. My imaginary Liz does not have the charm and humorous turn of phrase that the real one did. But I know she would have had a uniquely Liz way of saying that the SAB hearing, that only one question counts. Are they going to do the right thing and say all people in Missouri must have the same rights regardless of skin color or place of residence, or are they going to do what their bosses expect them to and give racist cover to permanently strip black people of voting rights? You know, I miss Liz. St. Louis misses her. We need her incisiveness, her righteousness, and her humor. There's so much happening these days that deserves to be ridiculed. St. Louis is a poor place without her.
Make sure we need to check that link. We're getting some text back here from North Carolina, a couple of other states. They're trying to make donations on that link. Please check that link and make sure that it's right. They're saying they're having a problem going to the link to make donations. Thank you, Peter Downs. There were two women that wanted to be here tonight. One is Kim Gardner, who is our circuit attorney here in the city of St. Louis. She had a scheduling conflict, and Sister Marilyn, she sends her best to you, and she apologizes for not being here this evening. The other sister that wanted to be here is Darlene Green, and yesterday was Darlene's birthday, and she had already bought tickets to travel somewhere warmer than it is here today in St. Louis. And but what I like about Darlene being a comptroller for the city of St. Louis, she also put her money where her mouth was and told me to come by her office on Monday to pick up a check to donate. So we need to know who to make these checks out to. I'll bring Darlene's check with my check, and we'll make sure that we get those in the hands of those folks that needs to have those funds. This is from the Office of the Comptroller to the family of Miss Lizz Brown. Dear family and friends of Miss Lizz Brown, on behalf of the Office of the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis, I offer my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Lizz Brown. In addition to her well-deserved praise as a legal analyst, radio host, and activist for justice, for a time Liz worked in my office as public information officer. Didn't know that. She was a wonderful communicator and loyal employee. As a prominent radio host, passionate community activist, and attorney, Liz made a difference by providing a voice for people who were otherwise unheard, not only in St. Louis, but around the world. Particularly, there was no more articulate or more genuine person representing the black community during the time of unrest in Ferguson following the police killing of Michael Brown. Lizz Brown shall be remembered for her commitment to justice for the disadvantaged, her Afrocentric vibe, and her beautiful smile. With deepest sympathy, Darlene Green, Comptroller, City of St. Louis. Thank you, Comptroller Green. Next up is another brother that's been one of those voices, and also attorney. He could have easily been an activist as well in the community. I've known him for his work with young people for several years through his church, and a good brother in our community, and a friend of Liz, and a friend of St. Louis. Here's attorney Gerald Christmas.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm blessed to be here to celebrate the lioness, Lizz Brown. You know, I don't even know how Liz and I met, but what I do know is as soon as I met Liz, we hit it off. You know, we both like to talk, we both were attorneys, and we both were provocateurs. You know, we talked about people falling out with Liz. I fall out with people too. I won't burn the bridge, I'll blow it up. So I know, and Liz and I never had a problem. We got along fine all the time. I didn't find out until the Saturday before Liz passed that she was even sick. I ran into Rodney Hubbard at a party, and he told me that Liz was on her deathbed, and it blew me away. And Rodney is also somebody who I had fell out with publicly. And in our conversation, talking about Liz and the divisiveness that happens in St. Louis, Rodney and I agreed that we would never fall out in public again. You know, we have to learn in this city to love and support each other, because we got this divisiveness going on. It cost us the mayor's race, and we know that. A race that we should have won. Tashar should have won that race. You know that very well. But it's our divisiveness that caused it. So I'm working in Liz's absence and in her memory to work with people, to bring us together. I still got some fires I got to put out. But once I put them fires out, I'm done. And we got to learn to work together to move our community forward. Last week, a young guy that wants to run for office, he wanted to meet with me for lunch to talk about he was running for office and get some advice. He's new to politics, and I told him, I said, I had the benefit of something when I ran for circuit attorney that you don't have. I had Lizz Brown. Lizz Brown put me on the map. When Jennifer Joyce was running for circuit attorney, She had the backing of the entire establishment. She had been in the race for several months before I decided to get in the race. Everybody said, you don't have a chance. You need to sit down. This is Jennifer's race. But Liz had me on the radio every day. And we were talking about the circuit attorney's office, educating the public on the importance of the prosecutor's office and why we needed to have control of that prosecutor's office. And we came within 3% of winning that race. We probably won that race. It was just stolen probably down at the Board of Elections. But I never would have made it without Liz. You know how the song say, never would have made it? Because of Liz, I'm stronger. I'm wiser. I'm better, so much better because of Liz. I listened to Liz today talk about the deep and ancient rage that the St. Louis Police Department had towards the Rams when they came out of that tunnel with their hands up. And by the way, I'm suing them right now. If you get called on jury duty, remember, you can be fair and impartial. And when I think about her conversation about that, I can just think about the NFL today and what's going on and how Liz would be commenting on that. And if you remember Liz on the radio, how she would talk about the babies. Remember she said the babies and what's going on. And I think about the babies today. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Freddie Gray. That was our last conversation. Liz and I were talking about Freddie Gray. She was covering the trial. She called me. She had some questions about the prosecutor's office and what was going on, and we were having a dialogue. That was our last hour-long conversation when she was in Baltimore covering the Freddie Gray trial. I think about Kajimi Powell, Vondere Myers, Mansour Ball Bay, Tamir Rice, and Anthony Lamar Smith. And I think about Liz and how she cared. She was Black Lives Matter before it was Black Lives Matter. And when I think about Liz, I think I'm hearing revolution in the air. And you know what? I'm ready for it because of Lizz Brown. I thank God that he allowed Lizz Brown to cross my path because it enriched my life and it made me a better person. And I will forever be living my life as a liberal and loving it. God bless Liz's family. God bless you. And God bless Lizz Brown. Thank you.
Wow. Woo! Thank you, Brother Gerald Christmas. Is Mr. Sylvester Brown here by chance? Okay, Sylvester was here. We're going to keep it rolling. I understand now who to make those checks out to. For those of you that are watching, those of you that are here, make those checks out to Ernest Brown. Ernest, E-R-N-E-S-T, Brown. That's Liz's brother. And he and his wife will take custody of Kaylin and raise him, and had a chance to meet Ernest this evening. And so please make those checks out if you're doing a check to Ernest Brown, okay? All right, so we're keeping the program moving. Before we bring Mr. Ernest Brown up, I have to share my last Lizz Brown story. Liz was a very, very, very fierce competitor on the radio. And she was very, very competitive, very competitive. And I can remember one morning, every morning after she would get off, we'd go to breakfast or we'd go to the Bread Co. We'd talk about the show and what we're going to do the next day. And I had been listening to, you know, Liz, and then I flip over to Ricky Smiley so I can listen to something kind of funny, right? And so I put a post on Facebook about how funny something was on the Ricky Smiley show. So Liz gets in the car. She's not looking at me. She's not talking to me. So I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Did you put on Facebook something about what's funny on the Ricky Smiley show, and Ricky Smiley's on at the same time that I'm on?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay." Didn't say another word. Went to breakfast. So she asked me again. She already knew the answer, right? Liz wasn't going to ask you nothing she didn't already know. She said, "Did you put a post on there you know, Ricky Smiley's on the same time. Keith, you can't listen to another radio station when I'm on. You listen to me and me only. I said, what? Serious. I go out to my car because I'm thinking I'm a 350-pound man, 6'1". I'm a grown-ass man, right? So I go out to my car, and I did what any grown-ass man would do. I deleted the post. I deleted it to show her. I pick, right? Because ain't no woman going to talk to me like that, except like my wife and my 3 grown daughters. But I said, I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, I'm deleting this because, you know, Liz is here. I'm 6'1", 350 pounds. I ain't scared. So I go back in. She's on the computer. She did like this. Thank you. She had already verified. See, Liz had a thing, trust but verify, okay? We didn't have no more discussion about it, and let me tell you, Brother Akbar, I never ever posted about another morning show again. Liz has a very, very close friend that has come here to speak this evening, and we'd like to give her a couple of minutes before we hear from Ernest Brown. I think it's Kimberly Ellis. Is that right, Kimberly? And she was a very good friend of Liz's, and I'll let you let her talk about her relationship with Lizz Brown. Kimberly.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to work through this. I know many of you don't know me. My name is Kimberly Ellis, and on Twitter, I'm Dr. Goddess, and she's actually more well-known than Kimberly, so I just had to tell you that. I met Liz only 3 years ago, and I met her on Twitter initially, and I had a segment on Sirius XM radio called Ask a Sister, Black Women Muse on Politics, Policy, Pop Culture, and Scholarship. And I saw Liz just once on MSNBC or something. You saw the montage. And I said, she's brilliant, and she's about justice, and I have to have her on my show. Well, you know, when you do the show, you prep for the show, so I was calling her as a guest, and she and I bonded so well that I spoke to her almost every single day for the last 3 years. I'm a digital strategist, and so I taught Liz how to master Twitter, which is so beautiful because she was so excited when Marilyn Mosby started following her back. And she called me, and she was so happy because Twitter gave her the opportunity to have a voice that she no longer had on the radio, and she was a national spokesperson on Twitter. Ken, yeah, I've heard a lot about you all, even though I don't know you, so I'm matching names to faces and things like that. And so I want to thank you for the program and especially the opening, the drum, her dress, everything, because it is worthy of Liz. She deserved so much more than what she got. So a few more things really quickly. Marilyn, she loved you so much. We will always say, Marilyn wears the white hat, because we knew that what she stood for. And Liz saw Marilyn as like a proverbial daughter. She saw a younger version of herself. And what's deep about it is that she knew that you did not have the support fully that you needed. And that's why she reached out, because she knew that she didn't have the support that she needed. Liz, I lost my mother in 2015, August 30th, 2015. My mom had dementia, and just because it's partly like you, Caitlin, there's so much, but Liz would call me every day when she was on her way to pick you up. And it turns out that it was during the same time that I would be headed to the nursing home to be with my mother. And so Liz heard me cry over my mother and talk about my dreams with her and so many other things. And so she shared her compassion. And the irony of the situation is that I am well over a decade younger than Liz, but I mothered her. Liz told me that she lost her mother when she was a child, and it breaks my heart that Kaylin would lose his mother. But I'm glad that she heard
the love that I had for my mother. And because my mother poured so much love into me, I was able to pour it into Liz. Liz told me that growing up without a mother, it made her a little bit harder. She told me that she was a little bit more competitive. And so when she met me, she was like, you know, you're just so nurturing, you're so collaborative. I've just not met many people like you. She said, I'm used to competing with people like you. And I recognized that she was just a brilliant person, and I didn't know her background in St. Louis. She taught me a lot about the politics, but I was helping to resurrect her. Her last speaking engagements, all of them, the live ones, beyond being on the media, I gave them to her because I wanted her to have a platform. I made sure that she spoke in New York City in the Personal Democracy Forum. I made sure that she spoke at Netroots Nation here in St. Louis and also in Phoenix. And the last part of this is that to show you, let me also say that, you know, Ken was correct. You know, when he said that St. Louis failed her, she could not get a job. She was struggling financially. It's not fair, y'all. It's not okay. And when we were in New York, we decided to walk from our hotel to Macy's, and we were really happy because we reached 10,000 steps. But Liz, she wanted to move to New York. She wanted other opportunities, and I was working with her to try to create that situation. And I cry because this whole situation is not okay. It's not okay with me. I don't feel comfortable. I'm okay with her being described as the lioness, right? That's okay. But two last things. It was hard for her to admit that she was struggling financially. And since I was an outsider and I wasn't from St. Louis, she confided in me. Liz talked to me about her dreams, her hopes, her failures, her fears, her desires, and we shared them with each other. She spoke at Netroots Nation, and we both laughed about how broke we were, all right? And so it was a struggle just for us to even get to Phoenix. And neither one of us could really afford our hotel, but we were roommates. We shared, we shared the hotel and everything. And there's a thing at Netroots Nation called the Pundits Cup, all right? Long story short, Liz won the Pundits Cup, but that's not the important story. The important part of the story is that they were making an announcement that, hey, you all, there's a competition. Those of you who think that you can be good pundits, if you win this Pundits Cup competition, you get $500. So naturally, two broke sisters, I was like, listen, we both have to enter this. Well, I was in the convention center, and right around the time that we were supposed to step up, I couldn't find Liz. Now, mind you, I knew we were both entering, which meant that we were going to end up competing against each other, but it just didn't matter. We were sisters, we were there, and so I called her and said, would you get your butt in here? They're about to start the Pundits Cup competition. She was out at some restaurant, and she booked it back. And just keep in mind, I called her to make sure that she was present, and she ended up winning, okay? Now, and really, this is it's a testament to our sisterhood. And so, yes, and so she ended up winning. She won $500. They put $500 in the cup, and she took a part of that, set it aside for Kaylin. She took a part of that, and she paid her hotel bill, and she gave me $100. That's the story. And so when we talk about vulnerable Black women, I would betray Liz if I didn't say that she wanted and she deserved a husband by her side, a father for Kaylin, and a community that protected her. She didn't have it, and I don't think it's okay. And I want everybody to remember that when we call her a lioness, what is a lioness without her pride? Trust, respect, and protect the strong Black woman. I love you, Liz. Thank you all so much.
Okay, really quickly, I want to recognize a couple of folks that have been strong supporters of Liz for a number of years. I saw her come in, Attorney Irene J. Smith, also former State Representative Quincy Troop, is here, and a number of other people that, and we all have stories, and we'd love to be able to share, but we are on a time crunch here now. So, Brandon also, Brother Brandon, I seen him here, and so let me bring up one of Liz's brothers. He and his wife. He shared a funny story with me. He said, "Listen, Keith, we were looking at retirement, and we were just going to just roll on into the sunset, and then this happened. So what do we do as family? We step to the plate." He and his wife are sitting here. Would you please stand and be recognized and make your way to the stage? Mr. and Mrs. Brown with Kaylin, come on up. They're stepping to the plate. You've heard a lot about Brother Kaylin tonight. Come on, show him some love, y'all. This is going to be the new normal for Kaylin. Ernest, come on out and introduce your family, man.
Good evening, everybody. Just want to thank everybody for coming, and I might choke up here a little bit, but my partner in time, love my life, Deb's going to say a few words.
Well, I have to tell you that 2 months ago, this young man came into our lives, which was quite an adventure. In the very beginning, number one, Ernest decided 1 loaf of bread was enough. Yeah, when he came home and I made lunch and we found we had no loaf of bread left, he bethought how much food we needed in the house. But he has been a blessing. And I didn't know what to say to this young man because I had never met him. And Ernest and I don't have kids. So I looked at this young man and I said, "You see your uncle, you see me, we are your wall. We are your wall. You know all these people here? David, Dave, Nick, everybody here, they're a part of your wall." And my brother reminded me that a wall is to protect you, but it will never hide you. We will be there to support you, but we're not going to keep you from what's on the other side of the wall. And I asked Kaylin, I said, all these people here know a part of your mother, but nobody knows her like you. You know all sides of her. You remember that? And I asked him, what do you want these people to know? And he said, she's brave, and she'd make me laugh. And I said, well, what do you want to tell the people? And he said, tell them thank you for loving my mom.
And I'm sorry, after the age of 40, I had to start doing this, so please indulge me. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and supporting my sister all these years. I especially want to thank those, and you know who you are, in her final days, helped her and supported Kaylin. Thank you very much, and that comes from myself, my father, and my brother, young Kaylin, and Deborah. Thank you. As you all know, Liz loved politics, but as someone said, she loved movies. One of our favorite family movies was Dr. Zhivago, like Dr. Zhivago, Dr. Strangelove. But there's a deep and an abiding rift in the Brown family. It's horrifying. It's about Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption. There's a contest and it's a rift, and it won't be solved until this young man over here gets old enough to watch both movies, because Liz sides with me. It's Shawshank, by the way. Kaylin Brown will break the tie. Also, in talking with movies and my sister, we recently talked about, we had heard, was watching Saturday Night Live, and somebody did a rendition of the Up to Serve with Love and talking about Barack Obama. And we started talking about that movie. And we both realized, one, love Cindy Poitier, we love the movie. And we also love the song in the movie. And there was a line in that song, and it goes like, how do you thank someone? And I think about that in my sister. And I realize, how do you go about thanking someone who's taking you from Dr. Seuss to George Orwell, with some Maya Angelou and Brother Malcolm X up in between? How do you thank that person? And the only thing I can possibly think of for myself, basically, and with the help of Deb, is to try and instill in young Kalen, for whatever feeds him, whatever inspires his passion, Lizz's roar. And finally, I just pinned a few words for my sister. Excuse me, sorry. It comes in waves. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. And it's called She Sought to Remind Us. She sought to remind us that we are many and we are strong. She sought to remind us to reach up and grab the wheels of our destiny, to steer to right from wrong. She sought to remind us not to be like scattered drops of, no, she sought to remind us yes, she sought to remind us not to be like scattered drops of rain, but to come together and to confront the pain, to come together and to be a wave, so that in the face of injustice, we will rise to be a tsunami. Thank you.
Thank you, man. We know that.
I miss my sister.
Yeah. We know Brother Kalen is in good hands with you and your wife. Would y'all agree? Okay, we got to wrap it up. I want to also just say, I see another sister warrior out there, woman warrior, Christy Griffin, who's been out there fighting the good fight for a number of years. It's good to see you, my sister. All right, at this time, Reverend Dinah Tapman will come and bless us with a solo, is what it says in the program. Huh? Oh, is that right? And then there will be a brief reception in the lobby where we can greet one another and connect and love on one another. So, Reverend Dinah Tapman, would you please come forward and we'll put a conclusion on this. Was this all right? Thank you to the crew. Thank you to all who are watching around the world. Sister Dinah. Thank you to each and every one of you that came. We appreciate you. We love you. There'll be a brief reception in the foyer here immediately following the program.
Brother McCoy. I'm Jay.
Thank you so much for that interview.
Would you like to share a few remarks?
Sure.
Don't put me in the shot. Okay. Well,
Yeah, Lizz Brown was one of those exceptional, kind of like Haley's Comet kind of individuals who was just intelligent, conscientious, giving, caring, and absolutely ferocious. I mean, she lived life with a ferocity that I'd never seen. She loved us all enough. I know she loved me enough to hold me accountable. And I believe that was her role in life, was to hold people accountable and to point out our potential. I'm gonna miss Liz. There's a crater-sized hole in my heart, but I thank God that I was blessed enough to be able to call her friend, sister, comrade. Liz wasn't just my friend. Liz was my buddy. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Let me squeeze by
Yes,
you,
sir.
Jay,
Yes,
before
sir.
you.
How you doing, my sister? Okay, good.
Would you share a few remarks?
Okay. So, first of all, I'm honored to be here. I came in from Atlanta because I just had to be here for Liz, and she meant so much to this community and so much to me personally, giving me airtime, and I helped her to interview people in Venezuela and Cuba and different places, and then the historic trip that we made to Ghana. It was unbelievable, and I think that Liz had a new awakening in terms of her consciousness when she went to Ghana, and how the people just marveled over as she talked about what radio means to a community. And so this was a great tribute to her. And at the end, as they described her last days and under chemo, I had a daughter that died with, she had actually cancer of the liver, and she was on chemo, and it just brought that back to me. And but I thank God for these moments, and thank you very much.
I sent you a link to the video.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Hi, Jay.
Share a few.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry.
It was, you know, the Reverend who spoke. It was one of the closest. Liz is my oldest friend in St. Louis. We actually both came here for school, but he so brilliantly put that, and it just hurts my heart that this genius gift came to St. Louis and was shut out by the white media population, and here was this gift to solve and to get people together, and she did so much. And what the speaker said about her sacrificing everything was so true. Oh, thank you, Jay. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. And I love that prayer circle out at the hospice.
That means we're connected.
Amen. Oh, I please God. Yeah. The one thing, I mean, there's also this wonderful thank you, sweetheart.
Come on, you didn't get a chance to share.
What are we sharing?
What you feel, your thoughts.
Oh, my thoughts for Liz. We just need to stand on it. We need to move forward and protect our children and the community like Liz did. We got to speak up and write up. That's my thought for the day.
Kevin, I would like your voice too. I'd like your voice too.
What are we saying?
Your sharing thoughts.
Oh, just love. I love my sister. This was my big sister I never had. You know, she's one of the few people in the world that when you talk to, you like, you know, she might be smarter than me. You know, so I love you. I'm glad the community showed love for Liz. She deserves that and so much more. But the most important thing is what was told to me by Kwame Ture when I got a chance to speak with him, and I was telling him how much I loved him. And he said, if you love me so much, then you love what I do. So now it's time for you to pick up the mop and continue my work. So when I think of Liz, I always think of, you know, it's time to pick up that mop and continue her work. So I love you, Liz, wherever you are. Appreciate you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, and that was very powerful. We're capturing a few thoughts and sentiments to put together in her tribute. Would you mind saying a few words or sharing?
Sure. I'm incredibly honored and humbled to be here in honor of Lizz Brown, who was not only a lioness, but she was a warrior woman in every respect. What I talked about today was that, the power of warrior women who never let any time, situation, or circumstance define their destiny. That was what epitomized Lizz Brown. She was extremely supportive of me when I was going through, tumultuous times in Baltimore City following the uprising in 2015. And I just know that that's a kind of support system that we need, especially in these sort of divisive and challenging times in which we currently live. And what I think that we should do in honor of her and in honor of her legacy is to utilize her as an example and to be what she was for so many other people near and far across this country. And so I'm honored today to be here and serving the memory of a phenomenal woman who was bold, who was beautiful, who was brilliant, and will always be a representative of what Black women, especially Black warrior women, are all about. Thank you.
Share a few words as well. We'll do both. Ladies first. Ladies first.
Take my jacket off. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thought, sentiment, honor, tribute, whatever you're sharing from your heart.
Well, the thing that pulls at my heart is that I'm also a mother of a young boy, and I looked at Kaylin. Yeah, Aiden is 10. I mean, you know my baby, and I thought, wow, if I've left, I would hope that my village surrounds him just like his family has. And during the service, I'm texting Keith and Angela, and I'm saying, we have to do something more for Kaylin than just a site that people can go donate on. So I have committed to setting up a 529 for Kaylin, and we're going to try to make sure that everybody gives a little bit a month. Just set it up automatically, and just think about if everybody in this room tonight gave a little bit automatically to Kaylin over the next 7 or 8 years. He'll be set for education. So that's my personal commitment. I didn't know Lizz very well, but again, she was powerful, and we will miss her voice. But that's going to be my commitment to just being a part of her village to make sure Kaylin gets a good start. Yeah.
Will you share a few words on video? Love, tribute, sentiment.
It is such an honor to be able to pay homage to someone who was so brilliant, so giving, and for her dimensions to at least be shared here, because there was so much to her and such a richness and such a incisive mind. She did more for this community, as it was said here, than a lot of organizations do and have done. She did so much to give to these people, and I'm so glad that some were able to give back, and let her be comforted, even though it was at the end of her life. So I'll forever be grateful. There's so much that inspires. She was an inspiration, and I think her legacy will go on in that inspiration.
That's right. So, thank you. Dr. Fry, would you share some of your thoughts?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Roberts. I'm a former alderman in St. Louis. Ran for state for mayor once, and a couple of times for president of the Board of Aldermen, and she was always there for us. She was a loving supporter. But she also recognized the value of being in business and entrepreneurs, and would often have words to folks encouraging them to become more independent financially, to develop wealth, make it sustainable. And that's what I do. I've built many, many companies. I've renovated buildings all through our neighborhood, brought thousands of jobs into St. Louis. And also, as a guy who owned a radio station in Jackson, Mississippi at one time, and several TV stations around the country, she was a good advisor and one that I could talk to just get a feel for current issues. So we all loved her. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady, and we'll all miss her, and always think highly of her. And to the family, stay strong. There is a legacy, and I'm sure her son will rise to the occasion with the right family members around him to support him in his quest as he moves forward in life. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm here with the MC for the evening and dear friend of Lizz Brown, who really helped set the tone and bring us into this opportunity to bid farewell and share love and celebrate the life of our dear sister. Keith, we want to close out our video tribute as well with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jade. Liz, like you, two phenomenal radio personalities and people that just really just lay it all out there and give it all each and every week for 15 years. You and I both know that's a long time to be in morning drive, 6A to 9A. 15 years, and she had a long stint, and she loved her people. You know, you heard it here tonight. She loved black people. She loved youth. She wasn't anti-white, anti-police. She was just pro-black and pro-youth and pro everybody having a level playing field. And so I hope tonight that we've raised some money, and I know my wife and I are making a contribution as well. And I've got some folks that are excited about some ongoing ways that we can generate some funds to help take care of her son the way she took care of so many other, of us in the community.
A word for their family?
Well, I would just like to say to Kaylin and to Mr. and Mrs. Brown, who will now be his wall, as Mrs. Brown said, we got your back. We're here on that other side of the wall, and the community and the village will come forward here in St. Louis and help you for as long as you need it. Yeah, thanks, man.
Oh, as for me, I had the opportunity to love and build and work and create with Liz. And she's such a brilliant mind and passionate, giving spirit. She raised my level. I love and care and embrace her little boy. Her son and my son were in class together, and we would laugh about how much we can accomplish while they're off at school. Look at all the trouble we're getting into. We will miss not only her voice, but her presence, and it must be honored. So we must keep that fire, that lioness and lion spirit burning within each of us. And it is my personal commitment to make sure that my work is a reflection of that. So much love, care, and joy to your family. Kaylin, Miss Jade, always love you. And you all take care.